on today's podcast, I've got Henry Herbert, also known as the Bitcoin Chef. It's funny, I've followed you for a while and seen you on bits and pieces and heard you on podcasts and stuff. And it wasn't until obviously you're coming on here, I thought, I was just going to look up because it does ring a bell, this fabulous Baker Brothers, because you're on TV with your brother. And as soon as I saw the start of the trailer, I'm like, yeah, I used to watch that. So yeah, it's how long ago was that you were on TV? 15 years? Was it?
No, about 12 years.
12, okay.
Yeah, 12 years ago. And it lasted for about 3.5 years. So we had a good little stint. So it was me and my brother. So he was the baker, I was the butcher / chef. So my background is cooking, but I was running a butcher shop at the time, and then I'm from a family of bakers, so kind of always involved in food. And I think it was around about the time that Great British Bake Off was kind of starting, and Channel 4 wanted a kind of baking show, but they didn't want it to be too bread heavy because they were like, how interesting is bread? So they were like, well, why don't we have bread and then turn, so if you're making a sandwich loaf, well then let's make some chips and make a chip butty. So kind of something to go inside, or a steak sandwich, for example. And the brief was they wanted siblings because they thought that was a good dynamic. And we were just right place, right time. And as a chef, I'd done Great British Menu and a bit of kind of a bit of TV and stuff, and had a bit of press as a chef. And my brother had done a bit of TV as well as a baker, but nothing, kind of minor stuff. And the stars aligned, and hey ho, we made a show. And I think our opening show had like 2.5 million viewers, which I think Channel 4 would probably be pretty happy with today.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah, we wrote a book in about 20 days. We were offered a book deal, but there wasn't a huge amount of time, so we were like, well, let's just crack on with it. And I think we sold 74,000 copies, which is it's quite a lot. And
how involved were you in the production of that? Was it like, we need a book, let's get someone to take loads of photos?
No, we wrote it. I mean, I guess
Okay.
I guess we had a whole bank full of recipes as working as a chef and from the bakery and stuff. The second book was probably a bit like the hard second album. We were probably a bit more kind of fat and lazy, and bashed it out a bit too quick, and probably didn't put enough thought, and it didn't do quite as well. But that's a lesson in that. But yeah, and then we got picked up by Discovery, so we did quite a lot in Asia and America, and did quite well in Taiwan. So yeah, I had a great life as a early 20s. Kind of I always describe it as a bit like being a dog in a car with his head out the window. It's very stimulating, a lot of fun, but you're definitely not driving. You don't really know where you're going, and occasionally you get whacked by a stick or so, and then the car stops and you're kicked out, and that's it. Done, finished. And so I'm a washed up
dog with its used to have its tongue hanging out the window.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of photos and some good memories. But
fantastic. Well, I'm sure our conversation will weave back to that. But the first thing I ask all my guests is what their earliest memories of money are. What was that for you, Henry?
Well, I was having to think about this because I've been listening to a few of your podcasts, and the thing I keep going back to was when I was probably about 7 or 8, we went to Turkey, and it was a family holiday, and I think we were given from my grandparents about 20 quid spending money for the holiday. Probably quite a lot of money back then. And it converted to 1 million lira note. So it was like this 7, 8-year-old. I had 1 million lira, and obviously back then, everyone wanted to be a millionaire. That was like, you could become a millionaire. That was it. And so I remember as a child just being like, I've made it. Like, I've got 1 million lira. Like, this is unbelievable. Didn't understand about, kind of inflation or currency exchange or that kind of stuff. And so I didn't spend it. Because I didn't want to spend my million, and because I just love this note. Anyway, so a few years later, we went back to Turkey. So I was probably 11 at this point, and they devalued the currency, and so they'd taken 6 of the noughts off. So my million note was worth it. Like, it wasn't even worth anything. They were like, yeah, that's not worth anything. And it's possibly not my earliest memory, but I guess it always stuck. I remember it because when I started getting to Bitcoin, it kind of that kind of memory kind of came up of like, oh yeah, I remember being totally stung by by inflation, and that the money in your pocket isn't necessarily what it says it is on paper.
Yeah, I suppose that's the real the experience you had was a really sped up version of what most people feel with pounds or dollars.
Totally.
It's the same thing, but yeah, to go back a few years later and find out that being a currency millionaire meant that, you might have been able to buy, I don't know, some sweets with 1 million
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you're 7, and then when you're
Nothing.
11, you
Yeah, yeah.
literally it's not worth
Nothing. No, no.
the paper it's written on,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
which is pretty sobering. Whereas, if you had a pound 5 years ago and you got a pound today, you could still get something with a pound,
Definitely.
but
Definitely.
just not quite as much. But
No.
yeah, that's pretty extreme.
But I think, yeah, I think my relationship with money, my parents have always been, well, they ran their own business, so kind of quite entrepreneurial, but more in a kind of like, if you want something in life, you gotta work for it. Don't expect a free handout. So I got my first job, I think I was 11, cleaning in the bakery, and my dad said to me, he was like, look, you get pocket money, you're now able to get a job. Your pocket money is stopping. I'm not forcing you to get a job, but if you want to have some money, you're now got to earn it, because I'm not going to give you pocket money anymore. And it was like, right, well, I'll get a job. And obviously, you can't employ people at 11 these days in the bakery. There's a few more health and safety things, but I guess it kind of just instilled in me from a young age that you know money's a tool, but also you have to earn it. Don't expect handouts. And I think that was probably a good lesson. I certainly didn't have a poor childhood. We were comfortable. I'm from a big family. I'm one of six, but we had a good life. But it was definitely there was no handouts. It was like, if you want stuff, you got to work for it. And I guess that's something that I try and keep myself, but also trying to instill into my children. And
Yeah. Early lessons in proof of work. Okay?
definitely.
Yeah. And what about the balance between spending and saving? Were you quite disciplined about saving money, or did you like to get a bit of cash and then spend it?
I've always been I've always spent less than I earn. So yeah, naturally always been a saver. I'm married to a wonderful wife who is the opposite end of the scale, which is I think it's a good thing, because I probably wouldn't ever book a holiday and the house would never get decorated and and whatnot. But yeah, no, yeah, I'd say I've always been a saver, but not like, yeah, I'm not a bean count. Like, I like living my life, and I think there's obviously lessons in Bitcoin about hodling and never selling. But actually, I think that what's the point? Like, don't spend all of it, but like, you gotta live your life. And I think when you have kids, maybe that kind of changes things, because obviously kids are really expensive, and you want to provide for them and do fun things with them, and it all comes at a cost. But if you're working hard and being sensible and you know not getting into credit card debt or taking out risky loans or whatnot, I think yeah, just be sensible. And
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one, because there's a lot of Bitcoiners who, as you say never sell your Bitcoin and just hodl and hodl and hodl, but there needs to be a means to an end, doesn't there? Well, it doesn't
totally.
need to be, but it sounds like you and I are pretty aligned on that, which
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
if I just die with my Bitcoin, either Bitcoin with me and then it dies with me, or I just pass it on to my kids, well, like, are they going to do the same thing? And then their kids, and then,
yeah.
like, who's going to ultimately benefit from that?
Well, I think there's a stat, isn't it? It's either like 40 or 60% of people who inherit wealth end up losing most of it, or losing, a decent portion of it. There's no, yeah. I guess when you're in the early days of Bitcoin, it's probably good to not spend it and try and accumulate. And I'm very much still in that situation. But yeah, I guess you get to a point where, as the price of Bitcoin goes up, you're not going to be, you know, whatever you're DCAing each month is going to be moving the dial less and less. And probably at that point you start thinking, well, maybe I should enjoy life a little bit more,
Yeah.
relax a
And it
little.
also depends on, again, your lifestyle choices, the sort of house you live in, or whether you rent or own, or whether you've got a pension or not. And all of these things play into it, don't they?
Yeah,
And
totally.
and I guess increasingly what might become challenging for Bitcoiners who have been around for, say, a couple of cycles and have been investing fairly hard is, well, when is enough in
Totally.
terms of the fiat value of the Bitcoin you've accumulated? At what point do you consider selling a bit to
Yeah.
facilitate you to whatever it is you want to do in your life?
Yeah, I guess that's a tricky one, because I own a house. I mean, I have a massive mortgage on it. So, but yeah, I get to, I'm on the property ladder, and I often think, like, if I was, like my nephew's age, 20, 23, I'm starting to get into Bitcoin, but also I'd like to buy a house. Like, that would be a really conflicting place to be, because I guess, it's so ingrained into us to like, if you're living in England, you've got to like own a house, then it's like, that's your security. And obviously, because I own a house, I'm not going to sell it because, well, then I'll just be renting somewhere. And actually, I quite like where I live, and I'm happy where I am. But if I didn't own a house and I was accumulating Bitcoin, and then it was a choice of, well, do I sell some of my Bitcoin to then buy a house? You'd be like, well, but we've all seen those charts of the price of houses dropping in Bitcoin, like, and I guess, yeah, I don't know. I'm quite relieved that I don't have to make those choices, because it's I bought my house in before I knew about Bitcoin, so I don't know. I guess in the future we're gonna have there'll be similar things. Maybe the kids are asking like, "Oh, Dad, I want a deposit for a house or whatever," and by that point, maybe I'll have enough Bitcoin that I could buy it outright. I don't know. So who knows where it'll go? Yeah, I guess we'll all be in that situation one day, won't we, where we have to make those kind of big calls. But I guess you just have to kind of step back and think, actually, what's good for your life, and obviously it's good to have security and having some sats in cold storage, but also it's probably security about where you live, and putting down roots, and starting a family, whatever. Actually, they're as important, I think, and I think they can go together, and I don't think it needs to be a binary kind of one or the other.
Definitely. And I think there's lots of emotional and psychological attachments with a house, a home, and property, for some people, not for everyone. So, if you're in your 40s and single, and actually you like traveling the world, and then
Yeah, don't
why
get
would you
one.
even think about
Yeah,
buying
yeah,
a
no,
house?
totally,
Just
totally.
just travel with your Bitcoin. If you're, I don't know, make a number up, in your early 30s, you're settling down with a partner and you want to start a family,
Yeah, it's quite useful.
probably you want the security of having
Yeah,
a place to live that you can call home.
yeah,
Um,
totally.
I don't think there's anything right or wrong with either of
No,
those. It's just
no.
being intentional about it, rather than, as you alluded to, doing what everyone says you have to do.
Yeah, yeah. But also, I guess, we want, or we know that Bitcoin is going to continue to infiltrate into society, and most people in the world probably like owning a house and having some security. So, as they get into Bitcoin, they're probably not going to change that opinion. So, yeah, it's probably, but then there's probably always been people who like traveling and like that kind of nomadic life, and want to, kind of not be tied down to a place. And hey, fair, that suits them. I think there shouldn't be any kind of prescriptive rule of like, this is what you should do. And I think getting into Bitcoin, it's totally changed how I think about money and how I kind of approach things. And I definitely save more now than I used to, but mostly because now there's something worth saving in. And
Yeah,
whereas
yeah.
before it was just like, well, it's nice to see some pounds in the bank, but when you see your monthly statement and you've earned, 50 quid of interest or whatever, or, even less than that, and you think, well, what's the point?
Yeah,
Might as well just spend it. And actually now, and I think that's yeah. When you get that bit, it suddenly changes everything. It just, it makes that kind of future horizon feel so much, not certain, but like reassuring, I think.
yeah. And I think the longer you've been in, the less concerned you get with the volatility, don't you? It doesn't,
Yeah, yeah.
it doesn't, you're not in just for the value of this thing going up really quickly so you can sell it and buy stuff. You're like, no, it's there. I'm not going to touch it. And I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
in the long term,
It's
it's going to
fine.
go up.
It is amazing that, like, just having that kind of Zen level feel of chill around, like, you watch it go, like when it does, have a 10% drop off, and you're like, yeah, that's like, I don't know. Sometimes I calculate it based on how much I earn in a year. And sometimes it's quite shocking. You're like,
Yeah,
but it just doesn't. And I think if you try to explain that to someone who doesn't get it, they'd think you're completely crazy.
absolutely.
But then
Absolutely.
I'm just like, oh, great, cheap sats, Hopefully it's coming around to my DCA time, and I'll get a bit extra.
Yeah, that's the only thing that does rankle sometimes. You're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have kept a bit of powder
Bit of
dry
cash. Yeah, yeah,
for the dip, but
yeah, yeah.
tough.
Tough. I'm
If
all in.
all the cash I've got is in, then I've just got to just keep
Yeah, yeah.
keep going.
Keep getting, yeah, exactly.
Do you, when you say about the the price volatility, do you genuinely feel no emotion at all? So if you woke up tomorrow morning and it was 70,000, or you woke up tomorrow and it was $150,000 a coin, do you think you'd feel the same way?
Well, that's an interesting one, because I definitely would have felt different a few months ago, but I actually deleted all of the all the apps off my phone. So I used to have it on my watch. I used to have it on my home screen. So I just, every time I'm looking at my at the time or look at my phone, there was the price of Bitcoin in dollars and pounds. And I think I just got to the point where actually I think my wife was like, I don't think it's that healthy looking at it 40 times a day. Like, it's not going to make a difference. Like, what are you doing with this information? I was like, nothing. I'm just monitoring it. So actually, like, I don't think I haven't checked the price of Bitcoin today. And
It's down to 60 grand, didn't you know?
is it? Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
Yeah. But yeah, I kind of, yeah. So maybe I've got to that kind of level of zen where I'll check. You know, if I haven't checked it for a day, I'll check it tomorrow. Or I'll probably check it when we finish this
Well,
call.
and if something really like radical happens, you'll find out anyway via Twitter or messages or
when
whatever.
the whole Elon Trump spat started, and I think it dipped
Lovers
down
tiff,
almost.
yeah,
Exactly, and it dipped down. I didn't even know it. It was only when I saw on Twitter, I was like, oh, it went down, went back up again. But like, I wasn't going to buy any and I wasn't going to sell any. So actually, that bit of information doesn't change anything. And I guess probably when I get around to, you know, when I put my DCA in, I mean, essentially I get paid and then I put a portion, you know, as much as I can into it. I never look at the spot price. I literally just send it to the exchange and just click buy, because I just try not to overthink it, because I think the times that I have been like, oh, I'll wait a day, and then it goes up, and then you just feel stressed about it. And I just think, actually, I don't, you know, I know in the long term it's going to be higher than at the point I buy it at, so I'll just hit buy.
Yeah, I mean, I do still. I'd be lying if I said I didn't look at the price a few times a day.
Yeah.
But I do think I definitely 100%. I'm less emotional now about increases or decreases, because it doesn't. To your point, it doesn't affect my strategy. It doesn't make me do anything differently. I think in the earlier days when you buy, you maybe this was just me, I don't know, but I think the level of your conviction requires the price to keep going. Like you're you know, if you bought in at a price and the current price is close at what you bought in at, you want it to go up to give you the confidence you're not a complete idiot.
Well, my first buy on Bitcoin was pretty much the top of 2021.
$60,000.
Yeah, about that. And it was only I think I bought 20 quid's worth, and then actually a friend of mine told me to buy some Dogecoin, so I bought some Dogecoin, and I thought, well, I've heard of Bitcoin, so I'll buy a bit of that as well. And then did a bit of reading later, and saw that Dogecoin's website said it was a joke. So I was like, well, clearly I'm not going to buy any more of this. But then looking into Bitcoin, I was like, well, I can't find who runs it, you know. So I did a bit more reading, and there was all these, you know, quite intelligent people talking about that this was a bit different, and I just got intrigued. And within a couple of weeks, I completely orange pilled myself and was like, this is it. This is the thing that I've been looking for. And then of course I went out and evangelicalized all of my friends and family, and the price just kept on going down and down and down and down and down.
Was it really that quick though, Henry?
Yeah, I reckon it was about within 2 weeks I was like, oh, this is it, and just started.
What were you consuming then over that time?
I think I'd been listening to I'd just been getting into podcasts, and I'd been listening to the Wolf of Wall Street podcast with Jordan Belfort, which, anyway, mostly because I like the film. Anyway, I didn't particularly like what he was talking about, but pretty much the day after I bought, Peter McCormack did an interview with him. And so I listened to that, and I thought, oh, this Peter guy is quite interesting. And so I went on his podcast, and I think the next day I was cycling to work. So I'd owned Bitcoin for 3 days, you know, and it was worth, I don't know who it was, but it was all about inflation. And at that time in the UK, it was all about inflation's come in, and, you know, how to prepare for it and stuff. And so I just listened to it, and I was like, wow, this is like really interesting. And then I've probably listened to a Bitcoin podcast every day ever since, you know. There was no kind of looking back, but I think I was primed, you know. I wasn't looking for Bitcoin. Bitcoin found me. I was that kind of disenfranchised, kind of slightly, you know, I'd run the I'm quite good with spreadsheets. I'd run the numbers and seen that, you know, my pension was going to be worth bugger all. I'm going to be working until probably till I die. I'm never paying off my mortgage. You know, I kind of knew all this stuff, and you know, I didn't feel depressed by it, but just felt like, well, what can I do about it, you know? And I didn't have the answers. I just knew that it was kind of a bit shit, but everyone else was probably feeling the same, and that kind of slight apathetic. I don't know. And then suddenly it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and it all just, you know, all the dots just joined really quickly, and never really looked back.
You were saying you bought pretty much at the top of 2021, and then it started crashing
Yeah.
whilst you went on your
Journey.
discovery journey to
Yeah.
become fully convicted.
Yeah.
That
And I
must have
think,
been that must have been difficult to do that when the price was coming down.
yeah,
How you must have
well,
did you not question yourself?
no, because within like a week, I think I'd heard someone talk about that. It's all about, don't think of it in pound terms, think of it in Bitcoin terms. That's the bit you want to accumulate. Like, don't, and so I realized, I was like, great, if it's dropping, I'm getting more Bitcoin. And so as the further it went down, the more aggressive I got. So one of my biggest purchases was at kind of 13,000, like, and you know. I'm obviously quite happy, happy that I didn't just ride it out and and kind of feel a bit annoyed by it. But on the flip side, because yes, it's gone up quite a bit, but we haven't had that kind of really euphoric kind of blow off top kind of. So I don't know how I'm going to feel when that happens, because I guess there will be the temptation to take some profit off the table, or to be like, oh, we could do the extension that we've been thinking about, or I don't know,
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah, yeah.
the life, because
Yeah, if that
stuff,
extension currently is going to cost, I don't know, make a number up, half a Bitcoin, but
yeah.
actually Bitcoin goes to 10x from here and it costs you 0.05
Well,
of a
yeah,
Bitcoin,
you were like, well,
you might
maybe,
feel it's worth it.
yeah, totally. But then that kind of trying to time the top, I don't know,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
So I don't. So I'm very kind of zen now. I might be, if we do have a massive bull run in the next 6 months, fingers crossed, But yeah, if we do, I don't know how I'll feel. And then also on the other side of it, like when you know that your stack has gone up to a certain point in pound terms, and then it's like 80% down, that might be quite. So I guess for me, I've never had massive drawdowns, because I've basically only been buying from the bottom.
yes,
So
yes.
I haven't had that kind of like prolonged period. But then I don't know.
I'm not. My journey is relatively similar to yours. My biggest buys were around the time with the FTX
Yeah,
collapse, and it
did
was,
us all a favor.
I just kind of thought, well, it's either going to go to zero, in which case, well, I'm losing what I'm putting in. If it doesn't go to zero from here, it's going to go up a lot. So yeah, it was that's the way it goes. So were you selling other things to put more money into Bitcoin, or
Not really, not really. I didn't really have anything to sell, because I didn't really have any money. So so I run a bakery with my family, and so we, if we have a good year, we get a small dividend, and at the time I would just leave it in the bakery and just kind of use it as a bit of a kind of current account. And I didn't ever do any investing or anything. It wasn't really something that I grew up with. I don't think my dad's ever invested. I had a work-based pension that I didn't put anything into, because I just thought it was, I always thought it was rubbish. And so I've never allocated money to it. Though I obviously get part of my salary goes into it. And, but yeah, I guess, in kind of getting Bitcoin, and then realizing that I need to like get more of it as quickly as possible, I've just kind of done that by earning money on the side. And, so that's partly why I've set up as the Bitcoin chef, and started doing these evening feasts. And a bit of it was our mortgage went up and the cost of living's gone up, and we, it was handy to have some extra cash. But definitely in the back of my mind was like, oh, actually, if I can earn a bit more cash, I can buy Bitcoin, and that'll help accelerate that journey. And yeah, that's so far been a kind of a good thing.
yeah. So did you not? So through your younger years and until you discovered Bitcoin, did you have any interest in money and finance at all? Really?
Um, Not really, no. So when I was on like I was a chef, and I was a fairly poor chef. I lived in London and never,
A great chef, just not a wealthy one. You mean?
no, just there's no
Yeah.
there are very
You weren't
few
a poor
wealthy
chef.
chefs. Exactly, just not a wealthy one. But, and and then I got married, and then I was running a butchery, and the day we got married, my wife's grandfather gave us a deposit for a house, which was like unbelievable. Like it was, and actually that really stuck with me. It's been like, I want to be able to do this for my grandkids if I have them. And then that kind of depression of like, I'm never going to be able to do this because I can't even pay off my own mortgage. Like, but now obviously I'm like, well, maybe I can, So, that was part of also kind of understanding Bitcoin, kind of gave me that kind of like realization that this could actually be a reality, because it was such a kind of a gift for us as a kind of young couple. I got married when I was 22, and the thought of owning a house was, we weren't even thinking about it, it was, and so suddenly to have a deposit and get yourself on the ladder obviously really helped. And then obviously when I was on TV, I was making quite good money,
Yeah, I was going to
and
ask you about that.
yeah, I mean, it was pretty, it was fairly lucrative, and lots of, product endorsements, and we were, because I did it with my brother, and he's 10 years older than me, and uh, we were quite kind of strong about who we took money from. So we got approached by quite a lot of big brands who offered quite large amounts of money that probably, like, looking back, maybe should have taken them. But we said no because we didn't like the product, or we didn't, we thought we were selling out or stuff. But we did plenty with other people. And a lot of it was just like writing recipes, or turning up and doing an after dinner speech, or, doing a cookery demo, whatever. I don't know. We did all sorts, and I got loads of free holidays out of it. And me and my wife we just had a baby, and yeah, I think we just bought lots of very expensive children's clothes. That's pretty
Right.
much what it all went on. And
So your increase in salary went on a kind of lifestyle creep rather than a
100% lifestyle creep. I think we didn't understand. I didn't really understand. I'd never done a tax return before, and so I was quite young, and my wife's uncle was an accountant, was like, look, based on how much you're earning, I think you should set up a limited company because you'll pay less tax. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, do I have to pay tax? And they're like, yeah, you're going to have to, probably pay 40% on what you're earning. I was like, oh, right, gracious. So we set up a limited company, and I didn't really know what was happening. I had to send some receipts and stuff, and it was all fairly laissez-faire, and he sorted it out. But that first tax bill that came, it was like a real shocker, because we'd spent all the money. Like, there was, like, we hadn't saved anything. It was like, but luckily there was still work coming in. So suddenly there was probably a 3-4 month period where everything we were earning was just to pay off this tax bill. And then we probably got a bit more sensible after that, of like, right, we need to, be a bit more cautious. We put a bit of money into something, but it didn't really do anything. And then we took it out and spent it. And then the TV thing dried up, and we still had kids and a big mortgage, and sold the fancy car, and just knuckled down. And I didn't, yeah, I had a great time. I loved it, but yeah, probably if I look back, I would have, put some in an ISA or something. But yeah, we didn't. I was 23. I didn't really. I mean, if you probably speak to, yeah, if you speak to a lot of 23-year-olds who've, on this, grand trajectory of their career, they think it's going to last forever. And actually I did. I thought, I didn't think it would ever dry up. And, we kind of planned, like, in this kind of future fantasy land of, all the things we'll do when we're in 10 years time, and we'll have, calculate what the earnings will be, etc. So we just didn't think we needed to plan, because when it stopped, I went back to my day job. So I went back to running the bakery. I still had a family, so I still felt very privileged. It wasn't like I, was under the bridge or anything. And,
were you
I guess,
happy? Was part of you happy that it stopped, or were you kind of devastated, or somewhere in between?
well, it didn't like stop overnight. It was just a slow drip. I guess, when you go from Channel 4 to More 4 to TLC to doing dubbed into Taiwanese, you realize that you're not on the trajectory of like superstardom. You're just trying to eke it out. And, the food festivals we used to, when we started, we were headlining, and then before you know it, we were the third act and doing it to, 20 people and getting paid, an eighth of what we used to. And I don't know, just like you just kind of saw that decrease. And so by the time it finished, you're like, actually, I don't really want to drive to Rotherham to a garden centre and earn 250 quid. It's just, I actually prefer to have my Saturday back with my family. So yeah, we kind of allowed it to like kind of stop, so to speak. But I think maybe because it happened so quickly, and it wasn't, for me, it wasn't like an intentional plan to like get on TV or anything like that. I just kind of, an opportunity came, and we just went, yeah, why not? Let's go for it. And I think probably on reflection, to stay in TV, you need to hustle really hard. Like you can't just like sit back and let people drive you, because they'll drive you in the wrong direction, or they'll stop the car and kick you out. You need to be in the driving seat. And I think I didn't get it. And actually, I don't look back and think, oh, I should have been more assertive or had more of a plan or more of a strategy. Because actually, it was never my plan to get on TV. It was just like, well, that's fun while it lasted, and it stopped. And then I just went and did other stuff. It didn't really, I don't know. I never really got kind of caught up in the hype, so to speak. Like I used to have a Twitter following of, I think I had like 15,000 followers, which, 12 years ago was quite a lot, and Instagram, and I just deleted all of it.
So did you have a manager or anything at that point, or
Yeah,
was it
we had an agent. We had
an
an
agent?
agent, and she was great. She was really good. I think also we were at that point where everything was going digital, and so every time we were doing something, people were like, oh, "It was much better 5 years ago. The budgets were bigger, the lunches were better, the perks, the
Yeah.
travel was better." Like, so we were kind of at the tail end of, like, of what TV.
Gravy train.
The gravy train was kind of finishing when we started. It was and everything was going to like YouTube and digital, and we just, I don't know, we just didn't we didn't lean into that side of things, and then so therefore it just kind of stopped, and yeah, and possibly, if we'd been a bit more kind of forward thinking, but we had a bakery to run, so it wasn't like, it wasn't like when we weren't making TV we're just sitting around, like we were busy, and just like, well, I've just got more important things to, got to make some bread, or worry about payroll, or the customer that has got a big order coming in next week. So there was always other things to be getting on with, and I had young kids, so I don't know.
And how was it for your wife? Was she happy to see you around a bit more, or was
Well,
the
yeah, she sort of,
adaptation?
yes. Well, I mean, we were around quite a bit, and she came on lots of the trips, and she loved the free Soho House membership that we got given for 3 years. She loved it. Yeah. I mean, she'd like that back. Actually, I don't think she would. Actually, I think she'd probably think it's full of posers, and kind of been there, done that. Yeah. No, she's pretty happy. Yeah. I mean, I guess my kids were quite young, and when I was off traveling for, like, weeks at a time, whereas now they're a bit older, it probably would be harder to be away, because they're kind of, they're at that age where actually it's nice being around them. I've got this kind of thing that I think in life, that things slightly kind of work their way. If you just kind of, if you're kind of open and have a kind of positive attitude, I think that quite often, it's not about doors shutting. There's doors open everywhere. You just got to be up for it, and kind of be open to see what happens. And so, yes, that TV bit was a part of my life, but it doesn't define who I am. I've done loads of other things since then that I've been really proud of and really enjoyed, and so I don't. I got really into gardening for a few years, and I loved it. And I probably had more fun, working out how to grow a potato than, and yeah, I'm quite a simple chap. Like, I'm quite easily pleased. Probably a bit of a cheap date.
So you haven't got high demands when you come to Bury St Edmunds to
Then
open
I
up our
look for,
conference.
yeah. It's very funny that because obviously I didn't know where Bury St Edmunds was, and I was just like, yeah, great, let's get involved, and then I put it into Google Maps. I was like, oh, it's a 4-hour drive. It'll be fine. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it'll be awesome. I'll get
Yeah,
some potatoes ready for you.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Well, it's
Yeah,
a
for
TV
me,
celebrity, we've got
yeah.
to start the day with a TV celebrity, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, I hope I don't disappoint, but I most certainly don't feel like a celebrity. I don't get recognised very often. I'm a bit grayer than I used to be, but yeah, I guess, yeah, it's just, I don't know. It feels like the bubbling pot is starting to get going in the UK, doesn't it? And it just, I'm here for it. I'm really.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. We got some really good, including you. We got some really passionate, great UK Bitcoiners who want to come along and do their bit. So
A few months ago, I was like, well, why don't I do like a Bitcoin evening, so actually we can just get all Bitcoiners in, or not just Bitcoiners, but like we'll promote it as a Bitcoin event, and let's get a speaker. So I just hooked up Joe Bryan, and just asked him, because I'd met him at the Bristol conference, and seen his presentation before the video came out, and thought it was brilliant. And he said yes, and this was before he was at Vegas and doing loads of other cool stuff. So I think I managed to book him early, and anyway, so we did it on Friday, and it was so much fun. We had 34 Bitcoiners in the building. There was one couple who came from Cardiff who weren't into Bitcoin, but just came because they thought it'd be interesting, and actually had a really nice evening. And it
did
was
they
good.
leave interested in Bitcoin?
I
Do you
think
think?
so.
Or,
I think so.
okay.
And actually, I had a few. Some of the nice things that came out of it was that, because often, if you're in the Bitcoin space, it's Bitcoiners talking to other Bitcoiners about Bitcoin, which is what we've just been doing for the last hour, and I absolutely love that. I'm here for that. But like, my missus doesn't she's not going to listen to this podcast. She's not going to listen to any of the podcasts I listen to because she's just not. Like, she doesn't mind it, but she's not like she doesn't buy into the whole kind of thing in the way that I do, and that's totally fine. And I think a lot of people have got partners who are in a similar situation. But actually, at this event, a lot of people came with their other halves, and so it was Bitcoiners talking really freely and being really able to like just enjoy themselves and not having to like curb their tongues. But also, it was a nice atmosphere. There was lovely food, nice wine. It was a good vibes going. And a lot of the partners came up afterwards and said, "Oh, actually, they've never wanted to go to a conference, or they've been to one and didn't want to go again because it was too Bitcoiny." Whereas actually, this was like a real nice halfway house that their partner feels really happy because they could chat all they want, but actually they also were there with other people who were just out for a nice evening, and it felt a bit more relaxed. And so I kind of, having done that, I was like, well, I'm going to do this again because it was a lot of fun and it was a good way to earn some sats. So, so I've managed to book Andrew from the Smart Web company. So he's coming in September, and we're going to do a little Q&A with him. And hopefully, if the price by then is higher than £1, it'll be, I think it will sell fairly quickly.
It certainly will, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, I feel like when you kind of lean into Bitcoin and you really allow it to like take hold of you, it's like putting a rocket ship, or like a jetpack behind you and just like lighting the fuse. And I think maybe it's partly his mindset that you suddenly things feel possible, and like there's not that kind of uncertainty of like, well, if in a few years' time this doesn't work, I'm going to be totally screwed. I'm putting all eggs in my basket, because actually I'm not. Like my eggs are in Bitcoin, and that's going to be absolutely fine. I'm just trying to like make the journey a bit more fun, and in a way that I feel that I can add value to the space, whatever that means. I'm not a techie or a coder or building websites or that kind of stuff. I'm, actually I like cooking, and I like, giving people a good evening. Well, let's do that, but strap Bitcoin to it, and suddenly the horizon suddenly looks a lot brighter and a lot more fun. But also the other Bitcoiners are just very they're just very enthusiastic and positive in the way that have you ever been to America and you meet people and you tell them, "Hey, I just got a pay rise," they'll probably pat you on the back and say, "Great job, that's brilliant, like amazing, man." And it might be completely surface level shallow, but they make you feel good. Like, yeah, great. It's like it's good to be like successful. Whereas if you do that in England, people will be like, "Shut up, like I don't want to hear about your wonderful life." Like, whereas with Bitcoin, we're all kind of in this like we're these slightly kind of like bit deluded and uber positive people who are really excited about what the future is going to hold. And so when people are doing stuff, they're like really positive about it. Like, you're doing a podcast, you're putting on a conference. Great. I want to support it. Like, come on. Like, it's, and I think it's, for me, it's really infectious, because I love people and I love being around positive people, and Bitcoiners just happen to be some of the most positive, cool people but they're like doing stuff. Like, it's not just kind of, It's not just like down the pub. It's like actually they're making is it like being the change you want to see? Like it's,
I think so. So. And it's actually not, I think a lot of Bitcoiners just aren't afraid of just doing something. I'm a bloody accountant. I've got no media training, as you can tell from my interview questions. This to me, these are just conversations with other interesting people, where sometimes the only thing we've got in common is we both have an interest in Bitcoin. But it's still an hour's come off these. I've been at work all day. I'll come in and start a podcast at 6:15, and I'm buzzing after it, because
totally.
I've had an amazing conversation with someone about themselves, about them, about Bitcoin, about their journey. And you're right, it's a very positive space. And although there are minutiae of things that Bitcoiners get really heated and argumentative about, but 99%, so shit coins and all that kind of stuff and even Bitcoin treasury companies, you've got people that would say, you've got Bitcoiners that would say it's anti-Bitcoin. You've got others that will go, well, everything's good for Bitcoin. That there isn't necessarily, there are different views, but fundamentally everyone's there for the same reason. And it's, I'm yet to meet a Bitcoiner that is down in the dumps, that's boring to speak to, that doesn't have a bit of a zest for life, that isn't,
But then the challenge with that is that when you like, I love my friends and I like hanging out with them. I really care for them and my family. And I really want them to understand Bitcoin so then they can feel how I feel. But obviously, you probably know this, it doesn't work if you just talk at people and verbal diarrhea on them. They very quickly get put off by it. And so you end up just not talking about it because it's you know, it doesn't have the outcome you want, and then you just feel frustrated. So then you just don't talk about it. I've been in that place for, you know, best part of two and a half, 3 years. And whereas actually now, what was really interesting in leaning into Bitcoin. So okay, so we've done these feasts, and my wife at the beginning was really anti me talking about getting Bitcoin into it because I think she was a bit embarrassed. Like, are we going to look like laughing stock? How are our friends going to think, you know, that we're kind of talking about Bitcoin and stuff? So we kind of, you know, I was like, look, I'll do it all over Twitter and I'll do it on Nostr, but I won't do it on Instagram. I won't put it on the website. I'll keep it hidden. It'll be a bit kind of covert. But then the Bitcoiners started coming and she's like, oh, they're normal. They're like nice people. And like, so we did this event and there's a whole room full of people. And my usual audience, I would say, is predominantly the grey pound. They're like the only people who have got any money. They've paid off their mortgage and they want to come out for dinner. And that's great. And so, yeah, my average age is probably late 40s, but mostly it's 55 to 65. They're like predominantly the people who are coming to my supper club, and that's fine. Like I'm really cool with that. But this Bitcoin event, there was people in their 20s. There was a 19-year-old kid came, and so it just felt like this kind of, it was like it felt different because there was this different kind of energy. And so yeah, my missus, you know, she's quite entrepreneurial and really kind of like forward thinking. So she's kind of going, well, this is great. These tickets sold way faster than anyone's. We should do more of these. Like, we need to like start booking speakers. And I'm like, I'm all over it, love. Don't worry. I've already got people messaging me, but like, hey, can I talk at your next one? I'm like, yeah, great. Let's get a roster in. I think kind of Bitcoin, you know, it gives you that kind of confidence that actually you can just get on with it. But also the staff, the other chefs and the waitresses, you know, they know I talk about Bitcoin, but and I've tried to get them to download wallets and like send them a few sats and stuff, but you know, like they're not particularly interested. But I decided to put a little QR code on the table, and people, they sent sats, and actually fairly quickly there was a decent chunk of Bitcoin in this wallet. And I was like very open with the customers. I was like, if you put some money in here, I'm going to split it evenly between whoever of the team downloads a wallet. You know, I'll give them all the instructions. And so when I told them, well, actually there's more than a fiver in there. So you know, if you want it, it's up for grabs. So they've all got it. And now suddenly they've got, you know, a little stack going, and
they're going to
there's
keep
been,
it.
yeah, well, they don't know how to sell it because
True. Yeah, good
true.
point.
So they're going to keep
They
it
have
for a
no
little
choice.
bit. But then there's been some text messages since being like, so what is this thing? Like, how it just gets the conversation going. And for me, it's like, if there's anything, like, I don't know what I can do to add to the space, but like talking to people about Bitcoin hasn't worked. So the only way I think it's going to work for me is by living it and actually integrating into my life and being really open about it. And so that's accepting it as payments and putting on these events and doing stuff. And I think if people see that it's successful, I think like my family members who are a bit kind of, you know, they think they're like, you're a chef. Why are you talking all the time about money, kind of thing? Like, get back in your box. You know, you're in the wrong lane, mate. You're more about how to roast a lamb shoulder, not like how to allocate your pension. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners suffer with that. I mean, obviously you are a money man, so maybe your friends and family respect you for
No,
but
not really.
maybe only tax
Not
advice.
really.
I don't know. But actually, what I found by living it, I think I'll be able to orange pill and bring more people on that journey because you're kind of, it's a bit more authentic rather than like something that's a bit covert and kind of in the shadows. And I think for me, and I was chatting to my wife about this yesterday, is that I'm trying to be really conscious not to kind of like, I love all the kind of cypherpunk and all that kind of imagery and the kind of the memes and stuff, but actually it's great if you're in the club, but if you're looking from the outside, it looks a bit crazy and not massively appealing. So I think I'm going to try and be a bit more, I don't know, not like mass market, but like, actually, let's put on an event that you can bring your missus to, and she's not going to feel kind of like out of place. I don't know. And then you get to talk about Bitcoin, and spend some sats and meet some people that you might not have met before and have a great conversation. But it's not so intense. I don't know. So like try and make it
Bitcoin's
as
ancillary to the meal and the
yeah,
experience. It's
yeah,
like it's
exactly.
part of it, but it's not. You're
Yeah,
not only there for that reason.
exactly. You can just have a really good time, and but the Bitcoin is just kind of, but it's kind of it's in its DNA. It's it's guiding all of our decisions and our trajectory. I don't know. I kind of and also the other thing is I'd like to take my kids traveling. Like when I was on TV, I got to go to some really cool places, but I haven't been back to Malaysia because frankly, when you look at the prices of taking a family of 4 in the summer holidays, like I'm like, it's not happening. But actually, Bitcoin's global, and I'm like, well, if I can become like the Bitcoin chef and I can put on events, well, then maybe I can speak to a Bitcoiner who lives near a nice beach
Yeah,
in a hot
why
country
not?
and be like, hey, do you want to get 40 of your mates together and I'll do a feast for you? Like, I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah, why not?
and that suddenly seems doable. Like, whereas, a few years ago, that'd have been like, what? Like, well, I had a TV show and I used to do it, but I don't have a TV show now. How am I going to do this? Whereas now I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I could probably do this year. Like, this is definitely doable. And it's the only thing stopping it will be my own, me putting blockers up. It won't be Bitcoin stopping it.
I think going back to your point around kind of embracing Bitcoin, when I spoke to Joe Bryan, he talked about the world is full of white molecules, and every Bitcoiner that turns you into an orange molecule, it increases the chance of a white molecule touching an orange molecule. And I just that visually kind of really worked for me. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think, as you say, none of it. I'm not. You're doing what you're doing in a really authentic way. I know that's what I'm trying to do with this and with the conference with Jace that I'm doing it with. We're only doing it because we're interested and passionate about Bitcoin.
definitely.
That's the purest. There's no other agenda. There's no other reason behind it. And yeah, one of the things I did was, you know, talk about it more on my LinkedIn as well, because LinkedIn's quite a traditional, bullshit.
Yeah, yeah,
Bloody,
yeah, yeah.
it's awful, really. But
Yeah, some
again,
of the
and
comments
as
people
much
make.
as, yeah, and as much as you stick your neck above the parapet as I'm a Bitcoiner, I know for a fact some people will have seen that and thought, fucking hell, what's he got himself mixed up in or whatever. And I can live with that.
Yeah, yeah,
I genuinely don't give a shit because my level of conviction and passion and enthusiasm for it, I'll happily, if people want to laugh at me, fine, you can
yeah, yeah,
laugh
yeah.
at me because
Totally.
I'm pretty confident in the end you'll be the one that comes back to me asking how you can buy it when it's
Yeah,
$2
yeah.
million a coin,
Yeah, I guess it's that temptation to not do I told you so. It's
Yeah.
gonna be hard. And I think I, I mean I've always been a peacemaker, not a fighter. Like and I guess just trying to be humble and also that kind of trying to remember where I was. Like I actually met someone in I think it was 2000 and maybe late 2010, 2011. It was a friend of ours flat share in London, and there was someone upstairs and we were all going out, and I went upstairs to have a chat to one of the guys who was living on the top floor, and he had all these computers and he was doing something, and I asked him what he was doing. He goes, "Oh, I'm mining magic internet money." I was like, "What's that?" And he was, and I had like an hour conversation with him about Bitcoin, and he was talking me through it, and it sounded mental and complicated, and it was like, if you imagine what mempool looks like, it didn't look like that. It was just strings of code, and and I was like fascinated, but not in a kind of like, oh, I want to partake and put some money into that. And I don't know what the price of Bitcoin was at that point, but it would have been, he was
It
home
may not have
mining.
even been priced because when it
Maybe
first
not.
came out, it
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
even
yeah, yeah. It was it
wasn't
was
even
so early,
priced.
and then throughout the years, every time that I saw an article in the paper, I would read it and be like, oh, Bitcoin, oh, it's doing well, but like at no point did I ever think I can buy this. I just it's a funny thing, isn't it? So and it was because I wasn't ready. You have to be I think you have to be in a position where you're looking for answers, and then Bitcoin presents itself and you're like, this is what I've been looking for. And then I grok it. And I think for me, that's why when it presented itself and I kind of was like, this is absolutely everything I've been looking for. And it answers so many questions that I've had. And it all makes sense and it clicked really quickly. But then my little brother, who I basically kind of strong armed into putting some money into it, in January of 2022. I don't know if he's ever bought any since then, and he was probably fairly resentful as it just went all the way down, and then over 2.5 years got back to the price where he bought it at, and now it's gone up again. But he's like, well, it's doubled. It's not, and because he's not in a position where he's like worried about the future. He's not married. He hasn't got a house. He hasn't got kids. He's not thinking long term. He's just thinking about what he's doing tonight or in a few weeks' time. And I think, I don't know, you kind of, for me, Jess's grandfather giving us that deposit and doing it for all his grandkids and just being like, and he was a working class guy who happened to do well and, and made some good decisions and made some decent money and was able to do that. And then thinking, well, how do I do that for my kids? Well, I probably can't. And then being like, oh, actually now I can. So I was kind of, I was looking for these answers, whereas I think you have to be ready for it. And I guess you just have to remember that, at one point you didn't understand Bitcoin. And so you've got to just be patient.
I do have some patience with that, but I also think, given how much the world has changed and is changing, and given how much more information there is out there now about Bitcoin and
it's
the number
easier,
of it's so much more accessible and easier. Like, so you've given your example of some guy mining in his bedroom in 2010. Even if you wanted to buy Bitcoin then, I don't know how you could have done it. Even if you had, you'd have probably lost it or spent it when it got to 20 cents a coin or something.
I'm glad that I didn't buy it and then lose it, because that would have been worse.
That's probably true. And yet now, you could speak to someone who's stressed about their mortgage going up. They're stressed that their pay rises are all being eaten away by, higher tax rates, that their food shops going up every week. But you kind of, they still will scoff at you if you kind of try to broach the conversation.
This is, I find myself as, and I'm trying to stop doing it, which is where I'm an incredibly positive doomer, because someone will talk about, like, they'll mention their mortgage has gone up and how, life's a bit of a squeeze. We're hearing these conversations all the time. And then you start explaining, why, and, and you start giving all this rationale and all these things that are wrong with the world and stuff. But I'm like smiling at them like a psychopath and really positive, because I'm like poised to like get onto the bit where I'm like, there's a solution. But then I look across the room and I see my wife and she's like, don't bring it up. And so I like hold my tongue. So I've basically just told them that everything's screwed. And then I've not given them any solution apart from just like smiling at them and then like having another glass of red wine. And so for me, I think I've managed to orange pill maybe 3 people like properly, and I feel quite successful with that. But again, those conversations were really natural. They asked questions and they were kind of, they were like in a similar situation where they were looking for a solution, and I kind of present, and they were like, yeah, great, like tell me more. How do I buy it? They were interested. And then obviously it's, you're off to the races by that point. But I kind of feel like maybe you're doing these fees, maybe it's a slightly more kind of passive way, but it's more authentic because I'm like living it rather than just preaching it. The waiting staff, when they're sats that they've got, in 6 months' time, if they've doubled or tripled or whatever, they'll talk to their friends and they might come back and ask, something just like it kind of bubbles out. And I think, I don't know, I think that feels like not like my calling, but like I think
what you can do in a really authentic way.
And actually, I love cooking. And I like earning sats. So I'll be doing what I'm enjoying anyway. And if I can do it near a beach in a hot country, great. And take the kids on some nice holidays, fantastic. If that then helps people go like, oh, maybe I should ask some questions, or like, or maybe I should look into this because it's clearly working for this person. Whereas, if it's just something that I just, occasionally it comes out like verbal diarrhea and I look like a bit of a loony.
Yeah.
It hasn't been particularly successful for me. And
I think when someone has a bit of skin in the game, it's easier for them to show more interest and learn a bit more.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's easy to be resentful of someone who's bought something that you didn't buy and it's gone up in value and it's improved their life. And incorrectly, you look at that and think, well, I'm too late now because I can't do what they did, without realizing you can. You've just got to wait a bit longer now.
Totally.
If I bought 5 years ago, well, you'll be in a better position in 5 years if you buy some now.
Yeah, but I kind of think like if you think of it as like it's just gonna keep chunking up almost no matter what, because probably for the first 3.5 years of me, 3 years of me being in Bitcoin, like I was in the red like most of the time. Like I was buying and it was just going down, and then it started going back up again. But I'd bought loads when it was a lot higher. So actually probably took 2.5 years before I actually got to break even. But I was measuring it in Bitcoin sense. So I was like, I had like stacking goals of like, I want to get to this point, like, because there's always that fear of like, oh, it's suddenly going to go to, £1 million a coin and that's it, I'm done. And so I kind of set kind of quite, not like, they weren't prescriptive. I wasn't like, written on the wall and kind of giving myself affirmations, but I definitely was kind of conscious of like, there was a sense of urgency. And I probably still do have that bit of sense of urgency, but maybe, I don't know, maybe slightly less because it's been, nearly 4 years now and things are looking a bit better.
Yeah, for sure.
But maybe if we have another bear market, maybe that sense of urgency will come back again because you're like, good time to stack. But I kind of think, even if people do get in later, they still have to go through that process of like, we had to go through that. You have to go through a period of abstinence where you're kind of making trade-offs of like, I'm not going to buy this because I'm going to buy Bitcoin, and you had to make those choices, so, we've done a lot of camping holidays. I love camping. So like, it's not really a problem for me, but like, I used to go skiing quite a lot as a kid. Haven't been skiing for a long time. I could probably go skiing now, but actually I'm like, I can wait 5 more years. It's fine. Like I'm quite happy to wait because I know that I could probably afford one decent ski holiday now, but actually maybe in 5 years I can do it every year, and you just make that mental model and it's fine. I'm like, it's okay. I can, but you have to kind of, if you want to, if you want to build a stack, you have to, unless you've got loads of money, like you're gonna have to compromise somewhere. And I don't think that means you've got to sell all your furniture or completely give up absolutely everything because, hey, you've got to be realistic. Like if I'd sold all my furniture, I probably wouldn't have a wife. And I actually quite like my wife and I'd quite like her to still be there in a few years time. So, it'd be a pretty lonely experience if I'd, sacrificed too much. So I think you've got to be realistic. But I guess, on the internet, it's, if you're only writing 140 characters, it's easy for people to be on the kind of extreme side of things. But actually, most of the Bitcoiners I've met actually tend to be kind of quite normal and sensible. And,
I think some people project
they project.
a
Yeah,
level
they
of
definitely project. Yeah, yeah.
Bitcoin maxi that maybe they
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
actually live up to themselves.
Actually, no, totally. And I try really hard not to do that because
Yeah.
and
Well,
though actually I was.
you're not a Bitcoin maxi, are you? Because you own your home and you
Yeah,
and you
exactly.
have a pension, and
Yeah.
so even you may be putting almost all or all of your available fiat into Bitcoin, but while you've got a house and a mortgage and equity in your home and a pension, you
Yeah.
don't tick those maxi boxes,
No.
So
And I'm fine with that.
yeah, ditto. Because
So yeah.
we can't change it,
No. Yeah.
easily.
And I quite like
Um,
where I live.
yeah,
It's it's quite
exactly.
nice. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I want to live in a van. It's
So the other thing I was going to ask you before we draw things to a close, because we have both got families, probably we
yeah.
need to get back to at some point. Have you been down you're a chef? Have you been down the food rabbit hole
Oh
with
yeah,
Bitcoin?
yeah. I mean, I've been down I guess I've been interested in food um and running a bakery where we try and do things the right way. The food industry is a murky world of additives and processing aids and hidden ingredients and and all sorts of stuff to engineer products so they stay softer. They don't they last longer. They taste like they there's it's so um,
Fiat.
fiat. Yeah, it's so fiat. So I've known about this for my entire life, and so that fiat food wasn't a shock to me. But I guess, yeah, I don't know. I probably was quite challenged by because I used to be a butcher, and so I used to eat a lot of meat. And then me and my wife actually, when we finished running the butchery, we went veggie, and then we went vegan for probably a month. I found the vegan thing quite hard. I was quite tired, but we used to live by, I think it was like kind of meat for a treat, and it was like, well, if you're going to buy meat, buy good quality meat, but just do it once in a while. And then of course, you get into Bitcoin and you're like, suddenly it's all carnivore and you're like, what? Like, how, like, you can't live off meat alone. Like you will die. Like, I don't know. Like it's not healthy for you. What about the vegetables? And so that Bitcoin challenges your perception because you're like, well, if they were lying, or if not lying, but like if the money's corrupt and it's not working, well, maybe other things are maybe not working quite as well. And so it does make you question absolutely everything. And I've definitely, I have to kind of pull myself back, because occasionally I get a bit too tin pot hat. You start reading too much and you get into the echo chamber and you're like, actually, I'm not sure whether this is what I got into it for. And you kind of pull yourself off and you're like, oh, actually, everyone's quite normal again. But I've certainly, adjusted how I eat, how I kind of view health. Like I've always been quite active, but I never really exercised. I now exercise. I go to an exercise class twice a week. I try and cycle to work, because I'm actually thinking a bit more long term and being like, actually, maybe I should look after myself a bit better. I maybe I would have come to that anyway. I mean, I'm exercising with a whole load of blokes who aren't into Bitcoin, and they also are exercising. So I don't think it's just predominantly a Bitcoin thing that you look after yourself, but it definitely, it's changed my kind of view on those kind of things. But
you're not a carnivore, and
I tried it. It did a couple of things. One is it was tricky with the kids, because obviously, I've got a 12-year-old daughter, I've got a 9-year-old boy. We don't want to kind of instill kind of weird eating habits, particularly, at a young age. So you're kind of conscious of not trying to like be too extreme about stuff, just trying to like, be a bit normal. My missus definitely isn't a carnivore. And I don't know. I tried it for a bit. I'd like to have done it for like 3 months, but it just didn't. It wasn't compatible with my life.
Yeah.
And I work in a bakery and I have to like test products. And so I've not done
so
that.
many really thin bread, big steak sandwiches.
Exactly. I don't know, maybe one day, but
what about things like seed oils?
Yeah, I've tried to give up all them. Like I've tried to, but it is hard. Like, I mean, the kids love crisps, and every time they go around a mate's house and there's always crisps, and they'll absolutely smash their way through them. I try and eat less of them. It is hard, but I'm not a saint.
You're more mindful.
I'm more
influenced by it, but not
exactly.
Don't let it rule your life.
No, so like at my supper club, if we do chips, we do it in tallow. But then we get quite a few vegetarians, so then I do it in coconut oil. So I can just, I can flex a little bit, but I don't, my supper clubs aren't just steak, raw liver steak, no pudding. But
and eggs. You got to have eggs with the steak as well. Yeah.
Eggs with steak, yeah. But, how about you? Are you?
Well, I did the Zoe nutritional.
Yeah.
I did that a few years ago, which really, really worked for me. I think that changed a lot of my views on ultra processed food and eating more and more whole food. But of course, that some of that clashes with the Bitcoin food philosophy, grains and things.
It's true.
Yeah,
well, I run a bakery. Hey,
I think for me, I just try and eat I try and avoid the stuff that feels like it's really bad, like ultra processed food, seed oils, stuff that is edible but isn't really food.
The one that was a shocker for me with the seed oil thing was because I listened to, is it like Seyfriedin? I listened to I don't listen to all of his podcasts, but definitely in the early days, I found them quite extreme. I was just like, whoa, like this is a bit much. Like it's kind of, because he is quite, like he's quite inflammatory with his language, isn't he? And the way that he calls it like industrial sludge or something. You're like, whoa, like, not heard people talk about that. And then
as you're
very
chomping
quickly,
down your Doritos,
it's very quickly you can normalize it in your mind, and then when you talk about it in front of people, and they're like, what? Like you think what? And you're like, yeah, this sounds a bit much, doesn't it? And I like the climate thing. Like I love the earth. Like I compost my vegetables. I try and eat organic food. And I've always done this. And I don't profess to being able to save the world, but it does. I don't know. Like I'm not a climate scientist, and I don't. But it does. It does make you question stuff and be like, and like as a business, we're being challenged all the time about what's our kind of carbon goals, and our customers are asking us, and you kind of, you're playing this game, and so we were at a point where we had a decision of like, to reduce our carbon, we could offset by funding trees being planted in Madagascar, and we were a bit like, well, I've never been to Madagascar and it's got nothing to do with my business. So we were like, well, why don't we support better British farming? So actually, as a business, we try and buy, we're increasing the amount of wheat that we're buying from farmers who are growing regeneratively. And it's like, you go meet those farmers and you're like, well, this makes more sense. They're putting less chemicals on the ground. They're growing with nature. They've got cows, eating it over the winter and turding all over it and fertilizing it. Like, I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. So I kind of feel like I was kind of on this journey anyway of like, we're trying to improve stuff, but like, but then obviously, you hear like safe talk and it's very kind of binary, like no agriculture, just meat. And you're like, and obviously that's very conflicting with the world that I live in, running a bakery. So I don't know. I've definitely struggled with it. I feel like I've just chilled out a bit more and been like, actually, not everyone has to subscribe to this. And maybe one day I will become a carnivore because that is the apex thing to do and you'll be the most fit. But I think at this moment in life, it's not compatible. And I think I could stress about it, but actually I don't. And I try to eat healthily. I've always tried to eat healthily. I make everything from scratch anyway. Like I wasn't eating loads of ready-made pizzas or Domino sauce or all that kind of guff. But I like a beer, I like a glass of red wine. I'll probably have a glass of red wine when we finish this, because I don't know, like I've had quite a long day. Yeah, life's too short. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm not a saint. And I think, yeah, it's easy to, and also like, like you come to my supper club, like we cook with meat, but also, you can do some really tasty stuff with veg and cook it well and make it delicious. Like, like it, but I do consume a lot more butter than I used to.
Okay. Yeah.
That's been a nice excuse because I was probably used to be a bit like thin, scraping on a bit thin. Now I'm like, my kind of my bread to butter ratio is about 50-50, which is actually how I like it. So I'm like, and I no longer feel guilty about.
Apart from it's really expensive.
Well, I run a bakery, so we've got loads of butter.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You get good deals.
Yeah, we get good deals. Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, before we go, the last question I ask all my guests: what's one belief you held before Bitcoin that you've completely changed your mind about?
I mean, where do you start? I mean, my wife often says, "You're a different person. Like you've changed
In a good way."
And I'm like, in a good way. And she's like, and I think probably maybe a year ago she might not have thought I'd changed for the better, but hey, a little bit of number go up technology has softened that. Yeah, I think Bitcoin, Bitcoin doesn't change, you change, and I totally believe that. Like I'm still the same person. I'm still just as passionate. I guess I feel freer. I feel way more not certain about the future, but just kind of optimistic that actually the future's going to be quite good, and I'm quite excited by it, and not in a kind of I want it to happen now because actually I'm enjoying living in the moment, and I think that's really important. But actually, yeah, I think Bitcoin fundamentally changes almost everything, and I think for the positive, because having a kind of longer time, that kind of long time preference, thinking about, thinking generationally is such a kind of abstract thing for most people, but to kind of when you go there, you're like, actually, it's all right. It just means I can take a slightly longer term view on things. I don't have to stress about everything, in the here and now. But there is also that thing of, this is part of a movement, and actually there is an opportunity to kind of, be part of it. And so that's really exciting. So it's kind of, but it takes the stress away because that Bitcoin doesn't change and it's gonna be fine. And therefore, if I'm still holding on to it, I'll be fine and my family will be fine. And not in some kind of like, oh, I can be a savior for, the people around me, but maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
Great. Well, I love that. Okay. Well, thanks so much for being on. Hopefully at one point I'll make the long journey to Gloucestershire.
Yeah, definitely. Well, maybe we'll have to get you to come do a talk.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't sell enough tickets, I don't think, if it was me. There's plenty of prominent Bitcoiners in the UK you can get through before you scrape the barrel and come to me.
Yeah.
The other thing it would be great to do is, I know you're coming in September to the conference, but I've been scouting some potential venues for you and your wife to come and to maybe host a Bitcoin feast in Bury St Edmunds, because I think that would be great.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We're doing it in Ellsworth because that's where we are. I said to my wife yesterday, I was like, well, we'll probably do them in the UK because I'm probably more known in this local community. But then, hey, then it's the world.
Yeah, and why not?
Mars,
Proof of work.
Proof of work, exactly. Yeah. Just do stuff.
Well, It's great to meet you, and I
Yeah,
can't wait
likewise.
to see you in September. So thanks so
Brilliant.
much.
I'm really excited to come as well. It's gonna be really good.
Great.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Gary.
Speak to you soon.
Cheers.